He was once the boy everyone ignored, carrying a sack of empty bottles on the train, stared at with pity or disgust. But no one knew that behind those dusty hands and tired eyes, a dream was quietly taking shape. A dream that would one day transform trash into treasure, and turn the boy with nothing into the man who owns an empire. The rattling sound of the old train became like a lullaby to young Arjun. He wasn't a passenger, not in the way others were. While men in suits read newspapers and mothers hushed crying babies, Arjun's eyes were fixed on the discarded bottles rolling under the seats. With a tattered sack slung over his thin shoulders, he moved from coach to coach, bending down to pick up empties that others left behind. The first few times, people scolded him, thinking he was begging. Some wrinkled their noses at his dirty clothes, while others shoved him away as though he carried a disease. But he was never there to beg, he was there to collect. Each bottle meant a few cents, and each few cents meant a small meal for the day. His father had once been a factory worker until an accident left him unable to walk properly, and his mother stitched clothes in their tiny rented room that smelled of damp walls and kerosene lamps. Arjun, though barely 12, became the extra pair of hands the family desperately needed. He would rise before dawn, help his mother fetch water, and then climb onto the train with his sack. Every clang of a bottle hitting the sack felt like survival. Yet deep inside, there was something else, a flicker of curiosity. As the train roared across the city, Arjun looked out the window, watching billboards that advertised shiny products, offices with glass walls, and young men walking with laptops. He wondered how their lives were so different. One day, while sorting his bottles at the junkyard, he overheard two men talking. "Recycling is big money these days," one of them said, "but only for those who understand how to make it work." Arjun didn't understand the details, but the words stuck. Recycling. Big money. Those bottles he collected weren't just garbage, they were a business. And that night, as he lay on the floor next to his sleeping parents, staring at the ceiling, he whispered to himself, "One day, I'll do more than just pick bottles. I'll own them." He didn't know how, he didn't know when, but for the first time, the boy with the sack of bottles carried something heavier than trash. He carried a dream. Years passed, and the boy became a teenager still riding trains, still collecting bottles, but with sharper eyes and a quicker mind. He noticed patterns, how people consumed, how waste piled up, and how small junk dealers made modest but steady money. He befriended one such junk dealer, an old man named Rafiq, who allowed Arjun to watch and learn. Rafiq weighed the bottles, paid the collectors, sorted plastic from glass, and then sold them to a bigger recycler. Arjun asked questions no other boy his age would bother with. Why do some bottles fetch more money? What happens after you sell them? Who buys them next? At first, Rafiq laughed at his curiosity, but slowly he saw a spark in the boy's hunger to learn. "This is just a chain," Rafiq told him one evening as he smoked a biddy. "The small man collects, the middle man sells, the big man profits." Those words burned in Arjun's heart. Why did the big man always have to profit the most? Why couldn't a boy like him climb that chain? His friends, other poor boys, mocked him for dreaming. "We'll always be collectors, Arjun. Don't waste your mind." But Arjun believed differently. He began saving not just coins, but also knowledge. He read discarded newspapers, paying special attention to articles about business and the environment. He discovered that recycling wasn't just survival. It was becoming the future. Governments were encouraging it, companies needed it, and the world couldn't survive without it. Slowly, his sack of bottles became more than just a bag of trash, it became his ticket to something greater. At 17, he decided he would no longer just sell bottles to Rafiq. He convinced a shopkeeper to let him store a pile of bottles behind his store and promised he'd pay more per kilo than other junk dealers. At first, it was small, just a corner of bottles, sorted neatly. But soon, word spread among collectors, the boy paid better, and he treated them with respect. Arjun had become a middleman. He wasn't rich, he still slept on the same floor, ate simple food, and wore patched clothes, but inside, he had changed. He was now a player in the chain, no longer just the forgotten boy on the train. He wrote his ideas in a cheap notebook. One day, recycling company. Collect from everywhere. Sell to factories. Not small, big. That notebook was his secret, his map to a future no one around him could see. The world still saw a ragged teenager with dirt under his nails. But inside, Arjun was building the blueprint of an empire. The transition was not easy. For every step forward, life pushed him 2 steps back. Landlords threw him out for storing too many bottles. Collectors accused him of cheating when he couldn't pay them on time. Bigger dealers tried to crush him, mocking his ambition. But Arjun had developed something powerful: resilience. He had been ignored and insulted since childhood. Now, rejection felt like fuel. He learned to negotiate, to stand firm, and to never compromise on his dream. By his early 20s, Arjun managed to rent a small warehouse. It was nothing more than a broken roof shed, but to him, it was a palace. He painted the walls white and named it Green Future Recycling. The name made him smile. It was no longer just Arjun's sack of bottles, it was a brand. He started collecting not just bottles, but also cardboard, scrap metal, and e-waste. He networked with small factories, convincing them to buy directly from him instead of bigger dealers. At first, many refused. Why should we trust a boy who once picked bottles on trains, they said. But Arjun countered with honesty and reliability. If he promised a delivery on Monday, he made sure it arrived, even if he had to load the truck himself. Slowly, 1 client turned into 5, 5 into 10. Then came a turning point, an international company searching for reliable recycling partners. They were impressed by Arjun's knowledge and passion. But when they asked about scale, he hesitated. He didn't yet have the trucks, the machines, the manpower. For a moment, it seemed the opportunity would slip away. But instead of walking out, the company manager gave him advice: if you can show us a plan, we'll invest. That night, Arjun stayed awake drawing diagrams, calculating numbers, and writing a proposal on borrowed paper. The next week, he returned with trembling hands and hopeful eyes. The company saw not just numbers, but the fire in his words. They gave him his first big contract, and with it, a small loan to expand. Machines came in, trucks were rented, and for the first time, dozens of workers wore uniforms that read Green Future Recycling. Arjun stood at the warehouse door, watching his workers unload piles of bottles, and felt a lump in his throat. He remembered the boy with the sack on the train, the stares, the insults, the hunger. Now, those same bottles were building his future. The empire was no longer a dream, it was under construction. By the time Arjun entered his 30s, he was no longer the boy people ignored on trains. He was a businessman whose company operated across multiple cities. His empire collected thousands of tons of waste every month, turning trash into raw material for industries. He had built recycling plants, created jobs for hundreds of workers, and even funded programs to educate poor children, because he knew what it was like to study under a flickering streetlight with an empty stomach. The media began covering his story, from bottle collector to recycling king. Journalists asked him how it felt. Arjun never glamorized his journey. He said simply, "Trash gave me life. What people threw away, I built my future from." Yet his greatest pride wasn't the money or the fame, it was the dignity he gave to those who once walked his path. He paid his workers fair wages, gave them healthcare, and respected them as partners, not laborers. No one should feel ashamed for collecting bottles, he often told them, because it is work that saves the planet. His parents, once worried about how to survive each day, now lived in comfort, proud of their son who turned poverty into possibility. The train still ran, and sometimes, Arjun would ride one just to remember. He would sit quietly, watching the bottles roll on the floor, until a little boy with a sack entered. Instead of shooing him away, Arjun would smile and slip a note into the boy's hand. Not just money, but a card that read, "Green Future Recycling, we are hiring." His empire wasn't just his own success, it was a door he opened for others. And as he looked out at his factories, his trucks, his workers, and the growing mountain of recycled material, Arjun knew one thing with certainty: he had turned the bottles of yesterday into the empire of tomorrow. The boy with nothing had become the man who built everything, out of trash. If this story touched your heart, remember, dreams don't need wealth, they need courage. Arjun turned trash into treasure because he never gave up. Greenheart, if you believe kindness, hard work, and resilience can change lives, then share this story. Subscribe to Kindness Vibes and help us spread more real stories that inspire millions.